Notre Dame's margin for error this week, absolutely zero.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Shout out to my everydayers out there. Will Tulane's G5 surge continue against Duke? Georgia Tech, Clemson, thoughts there. Bama has to look good this week, and best bets for week 3. All on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Like your players, they sweat every detail over at Mazda because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be move. So Notre Dame takes on Texas A&M this week. It's one of the best games of the week in all of college football. And Notre Dame simply has to win or they will not find themselves in the college football playoff. The amount of things that would have to go their way are just almost impossible to foresee. As it currently stands, Texas A&M is the last and only ranked team remaining on Texas A&M or on Notre Dame's schedule. I might have said the same thing twice in there. I'm just that fired up about how badly Illinois needs to win this football game. This was a close win for Notre Dame last year at College Station in week 1. It was close. They pulled away in the fourth quarter, played out about how I expected. I think Notre Dame is going to win this game, not just because of the pressure that is on them here, but let me get to the game itself in just a moment and go deeper into the stakes. The remaining schedule for Notre Dame after 16th ranked Texas A&M. Now, they have a 3-point road loss at Miami, and the committee, with their new criteria that we don't fully know how it's going to be implemented yet, has said, we're not going to punish you as much for losing to a good team. Well, Miami is a top 10 team in college football. They lost on the road by 3 points. It shouldn't be majorly punitive. I don't believe it will be. If Notre Dame wins this game against Texas A&M, and then goes on to have a good season, and Texas A&M goes on to have a good rest of their season, then Notre Dame actually could get in at 10-2. I think it's feasible, not a guarantee, but it is feasible. But if you lose this game, you are banking almost all of your playoff hopes on USC. That is the best team on paper that remains on this Notre Dame schedule. Because after the Aggies this weekend, it goes like this. Purdue at Arkansas, Boise State, NC State, USC at Boston College, Navy at Pitt, Syracuse at Stanford. I'm telling you, maybe Pitt winds up being in the top 25. Even if they do, is that going to do a lot for them? No, USC is the team Notre Dame would need to have a wildly successful surge in Lincoln Riley's 4th year. That's what would have to happen, is you'd need to see Lincoln Riley get the Trojans inside the top 10 or close to it at that point, and then you'd probably need to beat them convincingly if you don't win this game against Texas A&M. So last year, tight battle between these two programs. One side has got a young quarterback. The other side's got, also kind of a young quarterback. And these are two coaches who come from the defensive side of the ball. This is going to be a fun, physical football game. According to our friends at FanDuel, Notre Dame is favored by 6.5 points. They are at home. They have to win. I predicted before the year Notre Dame would split their first 2 games. I thought they would win at Miami and lose in this one, but I'm sticking to my guns that Notre Dame is still a really good team. CJ Carr, last time out, Notre Dame didn't play in week 2. He was playing his first game on the road in an environment that was frankly better than I was expecting and have seen from Miami over the years. Props to the Hurricane fans. And he made really just one mistake. The interception on the screen pass, that ball has to be dirted. It just does. Guess what? He's at least seen that now. He gets his first start at home. And as long as he stays away from that mistake, which was my concern going into the Miami game, and that was the difference in the game, then Notre Dame, I think, is going to be just fine. I don't know about great, because I think Texas A&M is good. I think Texas A&M is a step forward team this year. This is a nice test for Marcel Reed and how well he's able to throw the ball. You know Notre Dame has good defense. You know they're very good in the trenches and can make life uncomfortable for any kind of quarterback, including a mobile one like Marcel Reed. A team that rushes for more yards probably winds up winning this game. And for Notre Dame, boy, that better be a focus. Jeremiah Love was far too quiet in game 1 against Miami. Way too quiet for a guy that has Heisman Trophy level talent. That is not an overhype machine when I say something like that. He is the most talented back in all of college football, bar none. Whatever his stats end up being at the end of this year, I think they're going to try and get him going. Now, whether Texas A&M lets you do that, that remains to be seen. But that should be the focus. I'll take Notre Dame to win. I'm going to put some serious faith in the Irish here. I'm going to take them to cover. 27-17, they beat Texas A&M. They get it done, and their playoff hopes are still within their own control. How about the other game of the week? Georgia Tech hosting Clemson. What is wrong with Clemson? You know how bad I feel about my national championship pick right now? Pretty bad. I feel pretty bad about it. Because through 2 games, I watched them go an entire half scoreless against a good LSU team on their home field and trail Troy 16-0. There's one question on each side that has to be answered to know if a team is going to win this game. Question number 1 for Georgia Tech. How consistent is Haynes King throwing the ball? As good as Clemson's front 4, as much hype as they had coming into the year, as good as I expect them to continue to be throughout the season, I think Georgia Tech's going to be able to run the ball. Not 300-plus yards as they had in their Big 12 non-conference win against Colorado. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. This is a physical team. Remember, this is a team that had Georgia, the SEC champions last year, on the ropes last season. This is a very similar Georgia Tech team. They know what their identity is. They get Rivers involved offensively at wide receiver in all sorts of ways. I love the way they use jet sweeps more than anybody else in college football. Haynes King is probably going to get beat up a little bit in this game. Does that impact his passing? How consistent can he be? Can he avoid turning the football over? That's what everything comes down to. That's the big question for Georgia Tech in this game. What do you get from the right arm? I know what the 2 legs of Haynes King are going to give you. What do you get from the right arm of Haynes King in this football game? Our friends at FanDuel have this all the way down to Georgia Tech plus 3.5. I feel like I just have to give some support to my preseason national championship pick in Clemson. I think this is an ugly slugfest. Watch this. 24-17. I don't think you're seeing a ton of points in this game. It might even be lower than that. I would take the under. I'm taking Clemson to win. I'm taking them to cover as well. That is not one of my best bets. That's later on today's show. But the biggest question for Clemson in this spot, do they look like a cohesive unit on offense? The defense, frankly, has been as advertised. Sure, they didn't play a perfect game against Troy, but you know what? All in all, it wasn't that concerning defensively. My concern was, wait a minute, why did Troy get to put up 16 points before you had a lapse or 2? Okay, why is the offense not marching up and down the field? What's going on here? Does Clemson look like a more put-together football team on the offensive side of the ball? That's the question they have to answer. That doesn't have to do with just one guy. It's not just Cade Klubnik. It's the offensive line, receivers, the run game, Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator. It's everybody. Everybody has to be better on that side of the ball. I trust Clemson's defense enough to go in and beat Georgia Tech. I think there's actually some value on Clemson minus 3.5 because this line was so much bigger. And Georgia Tech's an underrated team because they're not rated at all, which I find to be ridiculous. I think they're one of the 25 best teams in all of college football. I like the Yellow Jackets a lot. I'm sticking with Clemson in this spot. I do not think this is easy. Do not be surprised. And by the way, if Georgia Tech wins this game, please rank them inside the top 15 because that's what should happen. It's not what always happens with AP voters, as we know. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. Tulane. Yes, we are talking about that G5 playoff hunt. You know why? Because it's starting to get spicy. We're overlooking UNLV, and that's because Tulane's a wagon. They've got a Darian Mensah revenge game, ? Coming, and Alabama has to be good. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward from last week's slate of games, I tell you what, a lot of different directions that I could go in this one. But I don't even know. There's so many options to choose from. Frankly, you know what sticks out in my head? The ability to go back to week one. Has there been a more moving performance across the country than Florida State beating Florida State, oh boy, Thomas Castellanos talked some smack and backed it up in a big way. He's been moving Florida State along in a significant fashion. Now, their big win came in week one against Alabama. In week two, it was, I don't even know who they played, but they put up 77 points. Thomas Castellanos has been moving Florida State, and Mazda can move you. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Gosh, I'm fired up for this one. Absolutely fired up. The Green Wave of Tulane are a favorite against my Duke Blue Devils. I'll tell you right off the bat, this is one of my best bets of the week. Duke is plus 1.5. Give me Duke in the points and the outright win at Tulane. Look, I respect John Summerall. I think Jack Retzloff was an awesome pickup for them after the TJ Finley situation. I think the Green Waves roster, clearly good enough to be a Power 4 in basically any conference. I mean, did you see what they did to Northwestern? That's what good teams in the Big Ten do to Northwestern all the way back in week one. Tulane scraped by South Alabama last week. I think this is a slight overreaction here with the line. So that's just a slight peek ahead to the third segment on today's show, because I do like Duke plus 1.5 because I think they're winning the game outright. 24-20. I think this is a defensive slugfest. Darian Mensah and the Blue Devils have to do one thing and one thing only in this game. And it did not happen last week against Illinois, and it led to their downfall in a 45-19 blowout. They've got to protect the ball. They just do. They have to protect the football. You can't turn it over 4 times and expect to win the football game. Now, this has been a problem for the Blue Devils each of the last couple of years. I think they had something like 84 turnovers in a single game. Not actually, of course. Last year against SMU, and SMU somehow found a way to win the football game, if memory serves. Well, now you flip forward a year, and they had a big opportunity last week against Illinois, and they blew it. Why? Because they couldn't protect the football. So I think Manny Diaz is going to have his team focused on ball security. And do I like Jake Retzloff? I do. I think he's solid. Who would I rather have? I take Darian Mensah. So you give me the quarterback edge. You give me a coaching matchup that I think is pretty even. I know a lot of people will take John Summerall, but Manny Diaz is a good coach. Not a lot of guys. You know the last guy to consistently win 9 games or so at Duke? He's the head coach at Texas A&M now, because everybody realizes, oh, that's not an easy place to win. You don't usually win games over there. Manny Diaz is good. I think this line's an overreaction. And not that it should be a huge point spread in favor of Duke, because this game is being played on Tulane's home field. But I think Darian Mensah is the difference in this game. I think that's going to sting for the Tulane fans who had to watch him go out the door and walk over. Maybe not walk. Duke is a long way from Tulane. You're talking, New Orleans area to Durham. It's very, very far. But I think that Darian Mensah does enough in this game to get Duke the win. And though the Blue Devils defense last week, it's not going to impress you. And in fact, it's going to be rather unimpressive when you look at the numbers and say, they gave up 45 points. I think that was mostly a function of their offense not doing their defense any favors with things like field position, or the number of times you're putting them on the field. I like the Blue Devils in this spot. Manny Diaz coaches that defense really, really well. They do a lot of the little things right. I think this is a really good competitive football game. Tulane's got a chance here to really separate themselves from the rest of the G5. They do. Because if they win this game, they'll have 2 Power 4 wins. They'll be a top 25 team by the time they go to Oxford and play Ole Miss in a game that could suddenly get wildly fascinating. But the Green Wave are certainly, dare I say, roaring. Oh, gosh, I said that. Wow. and I'm keeping it in the show because I edit this thing. I'm taking Duke to win 24-17. It's a big opportunity for the Green Wave. You win this game, you can lose to Ole Miss and still control your own destiny to be the Group of 5 playoff spot. Far be it from me to forget to inform you, the college football public, that a Group of 5 team is automatically getting in the playoff every year. Yeah, I think we do a pretty good job keeping track of that here at Locked On College Football. Speaking of games that everyone will be watching, or at least should be watching, you realize Wisconsin goes to play Alabama this week? Kalen DeBoer doesn't just need a win, because he needs to win as many games as humanly possible to win over the Alabama fans that have already given up on him as their head coach. And I think that's dramatic, but I think putting him on the hot seat for the rest of the season is incredibly fair. There was an interesting thread on Twitter that I saw last week with regards to Kalen DeBoer's buyout. It's a sizable chunk of change, but it can be paid out a little bit over time if they would like. Makes it a bit more manageable for an athletic department to swallow that particular pill. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Alabama's favored by 20-ish in this game. I'm not picking a final score because I don't quite know what to expect. This is not one of my best bets. I think Alabama's going to win, but they don't need to just win. They're favored by around 20.5 points, according to our friends at FanDuel. They need to win. They need to cover that number pretty comfortably, I think, or else you're going to have more questions raised about Kalen DeBoer and his coaching staff. Why? Well, number one, Wisconsin is fine, capable, solid, nothing special. Last year on their home field, this same coaching staff in that year that wasn't any good for Alabama when they went 9-4, they beat Wisconsin 42-10. Now you're coming back home, and oh, by the way, Wisconsin is playing with a backup quarterback. I believe that was a game the quarterback got injured, but now the quarterback's been injured before this game actually starts. Do you know the name Danny O'Neal? Probably not. Look, he was at San Diego State last season. He was fine over there and got an opportunity to go to a Power 4 school where he wasn't the starter, but he's the backup, and now he's going to start at Alabama this year instead of starting for San Diego State. Make of that whatever you will. But clearly, in this moment, it's working out for him because he has a chance to showcase to the entire world what he can do. You go beat Alabama on their home field, people are going to notice. You beat Alabama, period. People are going to notice. So that's a tremendous opportunity. But you're Kalen DeBoer, who had an embarrassing Week 1 loss that you're still trying to shake off the narrative from. You were on your home field for a second straight week. You played great against a Group of 5 team a week ago. Now you have your second Power 4 non-conference matchup. The first one was a mess. This one is at Bryant-Denny Stadium at Nick Saban Field. You better not screw this up. You're playing a backup quarterback. Alabama should win. Alabama should win big. They should dominate on both sides of the ball. If they don't, that's all I'll say. It's just one of those kind of moments. Because what would the excuse be? What would the rationale be? What would the justification be? I don't even know at this point. I really don't. Because I don't think there's a good one that you can point to and say, well, he had to deal with it. No, even if, God forbid, Ty Simpson got injured in this game and had to leave, you'd now both be playing with your backup quarterback. You should still have the advantage. Point spreads are just numbers. I know Bama's a 20-point favorite. They're a 22.5-point favorite, I believe it was last year at Vanderbilt. They lost the game outright. So Kalen DeBoer is a double-digit favorite. Hasn't always been great during his tenure with the Crimson Tide. This week needs to be really good, or he's going to have more people calling for his job. And who would want that? Who would want that? Certainly, I've never gotten a comment like that before. For those listening, I sarcastically exaggerated a wink. I got my best bets. I'm at 500 on the year, but we're getting over 500 this week. First, this episode brought to you by Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. I'm a golfer. I'm an avid golfer. Hydration's really important because where I live right now, it's routinely 95 to 100 degrees out there on the golf course. If I'm not hydrated, the chances that I play well drop precipitously. That's where Drip Drop comes in. I'm a huge fan of a bunch of their flavors. Watermelon is my go-to. There's not enough watermelon Drip Drop in my pantry right now because when I want to stay hydrated and I want something that tastes great, and look, frankly, The water where I live, I'm a bit of a water snob. But guess what? Drip Drop makes it really easy because they taste great. The packets are really easy to use. You mix it with your water and boom, you've got a great tasting hydration beverage for whatever routine you want to keep consistent. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Check them out at dripdrop.com. Use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. It's time to look back at last week and crown the MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Diego Pavia, a 34-point comeback in the second half. They were down 10, but they scored 34 straight points on the road in Blacksburg. He might have single-handedly been the final nail in the coffin for Brent Pry as the head coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies because, man, has not been as good as it's needed to be. And Diego Pavia was just another example of that. You know who else deserves a shout out? Blake Shapen at Mississippi State. Did you see what he did last week? Knocking off the 12th ranked team in the country, 11th ranked team. And did they get ranked? No, of course not, because brand bias exists. But those players delivered for their teams rather, and DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $150 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Check out DoorDash today. All right, I already mentioned one of my best bets earlier on today's show, and that's Duke plus 1.5 at Tulane. I think they're winning the game outright. I don't know what kind of maniac picks a team to lose by one. I mean, USC lost by one to, I think it was Maryland last year, like 29-28. And you know what? If you somehow hit a live line of plus 1.5, props to you. These odds provided by our friends at FanDuel, by the way. So Duke plus 1.5 is in there. My four other games that I very much like, and then I'll give you my Oregon pick as well because I hand that out every week over at Locked On Ducks. Let me start with this one. In rivalry games, I'm a take the points kind of guy. West Virginia is getting over a touchdown. They are at home for the Backyard Brawl. At home. Is West Virginia a good team? No. They are certainly, they should be, a motivated bunch because they lost to Ohio last week in the MAC. Another horrible look for the Big 12. One of your perceived contenders lost to a bottom-tier team in the SEC from last season. That wasn't good. Kansas State lost to Army. That wasn't good. West Virginia lost to Ohio. Come on, guys. And you know what? I don't have that much faith in the Mountaineers roster. I just have a principle I'm sticking to. If you want to fade these picks, hey, FanDuel.com. It's right there. It's available to you all out there. So, yeah, 7.5 over a touchdown. I think Pitt wins. Give me Pitt by 4 or 5 points, and West Virginia sneaks out a cover there in Morgantown. Another one. Mentioned this earlier in the week. I don't know that it's wise to go against the Bulls at this point for a third straight week because South Florida is not just 2-0 on the season. They're 2-0 against the spread because they've been underdogs in both of those games. So let's ride the South Florida underdog train. Are they winning? No. Miami's too good. But you know what? I like Dono's score prediction from earlier this week. It was like 31-17. I think Miami wins. I don't think this ever gets super uncomfortable. I think Miami fans in the back of their minds have that thought, is Mario going to blow this again at some point? And then it's all fine because you realize, oh, Mario's put a very talented roster on the field, and it's more talented than South Florida. And unlike Florida's coaching staff, we're going to have our guys ready to go and making the right adjustments during the game. So South Florida plus 17.5. They're at Miami, but that's not a very long road trip, just like Gainesville wasn't. They won that outright. I don't think they do that again. Not that I thought they were doing it last week, just throwing it out there. So next one, get this before the Friday night games roll along. Houston is down to a 3.5-point favorite as I'm recording this show against Colorado, who are changing quarterbacks, who haven't looked all that impressive, particularly on defense. Houston is at home. I think they win 31-14. I think this is my favorite pick of the week. If you only wanted to pick one game to elect to ride with me on for my best bets of the week, I would absolutely take Houston minus 3.5 against Colorado. Look, Connor Wegman hasn't yet been lighting the world on fire. He might have an opportunity this week. The Colorado defense just straight up has not been good. I think Robert Livingston's a pretty good defense coordinator. Maybe he's just lacking the personnel on that side of the ball. But they have not been good enough. Houston will run the ball. And against Colorado, you can run the ball. You can. Georgia Tech showed you how. They went to Boulder week 1 and went for over 300 yards on the ground. Colorado was then starting Caden Salter, and we'll see if it actually winds up being Ryan Staub, because Deion Sanders, after those reports came out, said, I haven't said anything. I'm not telling you guys who start. You don't know anything. Okay, Deion. All right. A quarterback change, maybe that incites the locker room. But on the road, I don't think that's the time to be working in a new guy into the fold on offense. Not against a staff like Willie Fritz and Houston have. So, give me Houston minus 3.5. I think they beat Colorado 31-17. Finally, my 5th college football game, not Oregon related here. Do you know who the Minutemen are? Do you know the Muffin Man? Do you? If you don't, it's not the Muffin Man. It's the Minutemen of UMass. I'm taking UMass and the points. They are at Iowa this week. Now, in no way, shape, or form is this going to be a close game. UMass is a future member, I think, of the MAC. It's either the MAC or Conference USA. I'm going to look that up in real time here. Because I think it's the MAC. They're going to the MAC. Yes. They are. I think they are now a member of the MAC, maybe, possibly. Yeah, it says effective date July 1st, 2025. It's hard to keep up with and whatnot. But anyway, UMass has been a really bad football program for the last several years. Hopefully joining a conference puts them on a more upward trajectory for the sake of the Minutemen faithful back there on the East Coast. They're getting 34.5 points at Iowa. In no way, shape, or form do I think UMass is actually threatening Iowa. In fact, I don't even think UMass is going to score a single point in this game. I don't. I think they're going to get shut out at Kinnick Stadium. How in the world am I supposed to think Iowa, against literally anybody, can score 34.5 points, over 34.5 points? I can't. Give me Iowa 26-0 in a shutout here. I think the Hawkeyes are still inept throwing the ball. My evidence is that Mark Gronowski yet to hit 100 yards passing. Their first game of the year was against Albany. He had 44 yards passing. Iowa's going to win. Their defense is going to dominate. I'm not trying to argue something else here. I am trying to say that betting on Iowa's offense to score over 30 points, I don't know why in the world you would do that. So, just to recap before I close with my Oregon pick and thinking here. Houston minus 3.5 is my favorite bet of the week, followed by UMass plus 34.5. I like West Virginia plus 7.5, South Florida plus 17.5, and Duke plus 1.5. Those are my 5 bets of the week. I am right at an even 500 mark against the spread so far this year. We're looking for a big week. A nice 4-1 to give a little cushion away from that 50% number. That would be welcome. My bonus pick, if you will, that I give a score prediction every week over on Locked On Ducks. Oregon minus 27.5. Even if you have to take this at 28.5, I think you're going to be okay. I really do. Northwestern doesn't feel like a program with a lot of momentum. Oregon looks like a well-oiled machine. The Ducks offense is further ahead than I thought they would be at this point. They're way further ahead than I thought they would be. Dante Moore is throwing the ball to every receiver that is on the roster, which unfortunately no longer includes Jurion Dickey, but Oregon still has a lot of talented former blue chip prospects in that room. They're not short on receiving talent, plus they might have the best tight end in all of college football in Kenyon Sadiq. So you combine that with a running game that has gone for 280 yards per game so far this year against Montana State and Oklahoma State. Northwestern is in that same class of teams. Unfortunately for the Wildcat faithful that'll watch a beautiful game on Lake Michigan scenically, but on the field, I don't think it's going to be so much fun to watch if you're a Northwestern fan. I have Oregon winning 45-6, so couple of big numbers here. Oregon, I'll swallow 27.5, 28.5, anything under 30. I think you take the Ducks in that spot, and UMass plus 34.5. Who doesn't love college football? You can't get 34.5 point spreads in the NFL. That's why we love college football, and why, as I say, every show, it's the greatest sport on planet Earth. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.